What? I thought you had Richard.
Father in heaven, we give you thanks again for another beautiful Sabbath day and the opportunity to come before you to delve into your word and to see the words of life that you have for us, that we might grow in knowledge and understanding. So Father, we ask your guidance, your spirit here, that you lead and direct us in the way of love for one another, encouraging one another in the way that we should go. So be here with us in spirit to lead the speaking and the hearing and the praising of song to you also. So Father, thank you for this opportunity in Jesus Christ's righteous name. Amen.
Okay, if everybody please turn to page 371. 371?
No.
I'm sorry, 721. I can't even read it. All right. Oh, Raymond's one. 721. I'll be able to turn back to page 572. Turn to page 640. Do we have any announcements today?
Yeah, we'll announce this again next week, but just to remind everyone, David Annian is coming in a couple of weeks. We're going to be meeting over in Lansing, Kansas with the Heartland Group and some others over there. I will have directions, or at least the address and so forth here next week. I'll also send it out by email again during this coming week.
The church picnic will be June 16th at Santa Fe Park here in Independence. It's just a few blocks to the east from 3 p.m. till 9 p.m. and we've reserved the large shelter house. Please bring picnic foods, drinks, and paper goods will be provided. And the city asks that you not park on the grass.
Any other announcements? Do we have any prayer requests?
Say that we all pray and make sure that that we've got the Lord backing us up on the decision of a new church. And make sure that's His will.
Anybody else? If not, let's have a quick little prayer. Eternal God, our Father in heaven, Father, we thank you for this Sabbath day, for the opportunity we have together to visit with you, to learn more of your ways, Father, to be a light to the people around about us, Father. We know that you are our healer. We know that there's many people that are in need of your healing, your comfort, your care, Father. We need to keep these people in our prayers from day to day that we know of. Father, we ask you to give us all those that are around and need your help. Be with your people wherever they are, that you will guide, direct, and heal them according to your will, Father. And be with them. We ask your blessing on us as a congregation, your people, and help us to be what we should be to the people around about us. We ask these things in Jesus Christ, holy and righteous. Amen. Now, if you would, turn to page 184. Please stand. I'll get to the next one. It's in here. Now, if you would turn back to page 10. time, we will have a scripture reading by David Butler, and after that, the message will be brought to us by Rick Tracy.
All right, I'll be reading from Isaiah 41, 1 through 20. Be silent before me, islands, and let the people renew their strength. Let them approach, then let them testify. Let them come together for the trial. Who has stirred him up from the east? He calls righteousness to his feet. The Lord hands nations over to him, and he subdues kings. He makes them like dust with his sword, like wind-driven stubble with his bow. He pursues them going on safely, hardly touching the path with his feet. Who has performed and done this? Calling the generations from the beginning. I, the Lord, am the first, and with the last I am he. The islands see and are afraid. The ends of the earth tremble. They approach and arrive. Each one helps the other and says to another, take courage. The craftsman encourages the metalworker. The one who flattens with the hammer supports the one who strikes the anvil, saying to the soldering, it is good. He fastens it with nails so that it will not fall over. But you, Israel, my servant Jacob, whom I have chosen, descendant of Abraham, my friend, I brought you from the ends of the earth and called you from its farthest corners. I said to you, you are my servant. I have chosen you and not rejected you. Do not fear, for I am with you. Do not be afraid, for I am your God. I will strengthen you. I will help you. I will hold you with my righteous right hand. Be sure that all who are engaged against you will be ashamed and disgraced. Those who contend with you will become as nothing and will perish. You will look for those who contend with you, but you will not find them. Those who war against you will become absolutely nothing. For I, the Lord, am your God. Hold your right hand and say to you, do not fear, I will help you. Do not fear, you worm Jacob, you men of Israel. I will help you. The Lord's declaration, your Redeemer is the Holy One of Israel. See, I will make you into a sharp threshing board, new with many teeth. You will thresh mountains and pulverize them, and make hills like chaff. You will winnow them, and a wind will carry them away, and a gale will scatter them. But you will rejoice in the Lord. You will boast in the Holy One of Israel. The poor and the needy seek water, but there is none. Their tongues are parched with thirst. I, the Lord, will answer them. I, the God of Israel, do not forsake them. I will open the rivers on the barren heights and spring the middle of the plains. I will turn the deserts into a pool of water and dry land into springs of water. I will plant cedars in the desert, acacias, myrtles, and olive trees. I will put cypress trees in the desert, elms and box trees together, so that all may see and know and consider and understand that the hand of the Lord hath done this. The Holy One of Israel has created it.
Good afternoon, brethren. I'd like to welcome, we've got a few guests. We'd love to have you. Glad you're here. Hope everybody's having a wonderful Sabbath. Pretty interesting in our Bible study in Acts over the last few months now. It's coincided with the holy days this year so well. It's been kind of interesting. And I don't think it was anything intentional we did on our part. It was kind of an accident. But at the same time, I don't think it was any accident because it fits so well. Makes me think about our church and what God expects of us. You know, we've been thinking about this building over here. David, could you turn that down just a little bit? I feel like it's too loud. Maybe it's just me. Think about it. What does it mean? I mean, what does he expect from us? That's what's important to me. Is this what he wants us to do? Or is there something else he wants us to do? I hope that's what how we make the decision. If we search for, we come to a consensus about what he wants us to do from here. Because, sometimes that's not really clear. It's a little bit difficult. I have a friend that I work with, salesman have. He says every day is an opportunity, and I think that's probably true. And I think that every day for us is our own opportunity. And I think we need to think about it that way. Now, if you look around the room, you'll find a lot of gray hair. I was talking to several of you before church, and there's some pretty good wisdom behind that gray hair. Was very impressed. And I think I can learn a lot. I think we all can from some of the folks that are older than us. We're all getting older. Same things happening in my office at work. Our manager came in, this has been some time ago now, and said it wouldn't be too long until we all needed walkers. I told this story before in a sermon, but I've added to it in the meantime. That was a couple of years ago. In the meantime, that manager is no longer there at all. Several of the other people aren't in my office at all. And we have some young faces. We've changed. And I don't think there's nothing more certain than change. Life changes as we get older. But our company has changed. I was thinking about this from a little different perspective, and I want to look at it, or try to look at it. All I can do is try to help. From a little different perspective, maybe. Try to think about the church. What does God see? What does he think? Isn't that what's really the bottom line important to you and I? We want to do what he wants us to do. I'm going to turn over to Matthew 16. And again, I've used this before. But I saw it through different light. One thing for sure, for better or for worse, I've changed. So let's turn over to Matthew 16. I'm going to be here quite a bit today. I'm going to start reading in verse 15. Isn't this at the core of who we are? And think about what he says and how this goes. Matthew 16 and verse 15. But what about you, he asked. Who do you say I am? Christ asked him. Simon Peter answered, you are the Christ, the Son of the living God. Jesus replied, blessed are you, Simon of Jonah, for this was not revealed to you by man, but by my Father in heaven. And I tell you that you are Peter, and on this rock I will build my church, and the gates of Hades will not overcome it. Now that's been abused a lot over the years. But I want you to think about it maybe in a little different. It struck me totally different recently. And I'm going to keep going in verse 19. You'll see what I mean a little bit later. Verse 19. I will give you the keys of the kingdom of heaven. Now he says he'll give you the keys of the kingdom of heaven. What's the key to the kingdom of heaven? Jesus Christ is the key to the kingdom of heaven. I believe that it begins with the words, repent and be baptized. The keys to the kingdom of heaven. It's Jesus Christ's presence through his Holy Spirit and his people. Or as we saw in Bible study, the armor of God. They are all part of the keys of the kingdom of heaven. You have them as well as I do. You know that. That's not difficult. But that's a simple message that everybody in the world needs. I believe it's at the core of what he's been doing on the earth for the last 6,000 years. He's been working towards an end. Seems like sometimes the message gets overlooked in favor of somebody's agenda. So we have a pope because of that. That's why how he rationalizes that. We have leaders that say, well, I'm him. Peter, I'm the rock. It started there and now I'm, But that's not where I want to go with this. That's somebody else's interpretation. And on this rock I will build my church, and the gates of Hades will not overcome it. Do you know that's the first place in the New Testament the word ecclesia is used for church or assembly? Doesn't mean church is in an organization or, it's just you out there. And I was actually talking to somebody about this a little bit earlier. It goes beyond that. You're part of that church. When you're out there, you're still part of the church. And that's your job, too. Just as much as it is mine or anybody else's. Now Jesus, we know Jesus is the foundation of the church. He was the rock. Let's read 1 Corinthians 10. It's real short, simple. I'm going to start here and read verses 3 and 4. We know that he was the rock. But he says, he's not only that for us, he was that for the Israelites. Verse 3, and they did eat all the same spiritual meat, talking about the Israelites, and did all drink that same spiritual drink, for they drank of that spiritual rock that followed them, and that rock was Christ. They relied on that foundation. It supported them. He took care of them. Even if they wandered away with some regularity, he still was their rock. He's our rock, our foundation. Another place, it says that Jesus is the cornerstone and that the foundation was the apostles and the prophets. And we'll read that later. But the people, those that came before us. He is our rock, and we do some wandering ourselves sometimes, don't we? And on this rock, I will build my church. What is a church? Just a group of people. It's just a group of people that Jesus Christ is molding and building into a building, it talks about. I don't think there's anybody here that believes that there's one organization anymore. However, you wouldn't be here if you didn't think that you were a part of a group that had a bigger part, was part of the bigger picture. And I thought last week on Pentecost that we saw a really good start. When we had people from different groups getting together in peace and harmony. We don't see that very much, and that's kind of sad. I wish that there was more of that. And on this rock I will build my church, and the gates of Hades will not overcome it. I used to kind of look at that phrase as the worst thing that Jesus could think of. And several times it's been pointed out to me that I was pretty shallow. That's kind of the way I looked at it. And the gates of Hades will not overcome it. I think that Jesus Christ said those words knowing that his church was going to suffer some pretty severe trials. And in Acts, it happened quick. We're going on in Acts, and it's talking about men being killed. This is not good. We haven't had to go through anything like that. He said those words knowing that Christianity would be twisted and abused, that Christians would be misled by people they trusted, often people that they looked up to, led into all kinds of pagan practices. We've seen it. It happens. And yet he wants us to know that the church will not be overcome. I think that he knew that it was going to be a rough road. And haven't we seen plenty of that? Plenty of changes, plenty of questions that every one of us have had. You as well as me. Now I want you to think about the phrase, the gates of Hades will not overcome it. I'm going to break it down a little bit. I want you to think about this, because this struck me a lot differently recently. First, it talks about the gates. What's a gate? Gate's a door. A gate is an entry place. How you get in. Back then, a lot of the time it was talking about the cities had walls, and this was the way in and out. And to keep people out or in, they had gates. What do they do? What's a gate do? A gate blocks the way in or out, right? That's pretty simple. They're the point of entry. Think about that now. Hold that thought. Then, how about Hades? Or some places call it hell. Lots of places it's translated death. Commentaries pretty much agree. A death or evil. I think it's both, personally. Death or evil. And I saw something in an article the other day that really got my attention. That made pretty good sense. It says the gates of hell couldn't overcome the church. They couldn't hold a gate holds something, right? The gates couldn't hold the church. I'm going to ask you, this article pointed out that how do you unlock the gate? This was so simple. When I saw this, I thought, man, what have I been thinking? Maybe all of you already thought of this before. You unlock gates with keys. Now, when the Bible was written, it wasn't written in verses. It was written like a book. And so that's the next phrase. How do you unlock gates? With the keys of heaven. Made perfect sense to me. I leave it to you. Because I'm not going to tell you what to think. I'm just going to tell you what I saw. That makes perfect sense. How did Jesus Christ unlock mankind? It's the keys of heaven. I thought that was so simple. And the gates of death and evil are open. And they don't hold you or I anymore. What a message for the world. That's pretty easy. What a message for everyone. I got ahead of myself. So how do those keys work? What's the keys? Accept Jesus Christ, right? Repent and be baptized. Build a relationship with Jesus Christ. Those are good things. Obey Him. Pretty clear that we have to obey Him just as much. But He brings us there. He helps us get there. We don't have to do this on our own. Now, I believe that the church with the kingdom, with the keys to the kingdom of heaven, it wins. And you do too. But you know, today's world, Christianity's pretty confused. The other day I saw an article. I was totally taken aback. And it was written by someone as if he were a Christian. And he was attacking a high school for their terrible punishment of some gay activist students. You know what that awful punishment was? You will never guess. It was so terrible. They were forced to read their Bible. It was a guy purporting to be a Christian saying this. They weren't showing love to these poor people. Reading the Bible? There's a lot of confusion out there today. And Jesus Christ is the only answer, and he can only give us the answers. You know, where there is confusion, all of a sudden pride seems to sneak in there, doesn't it? I don't know. We tend to stray off the path with some regularity. Christ is still our rock. The apostles and prophets are still there. And the gates of hell will not overcome it. I don't know about you, but that phrase kind of gives me goosebumps. As a part of the building, do you need to worry? You have the keys. It's your choice, just like everybody else. The church in Acts was the first, and they set the example. We've seen the church tested. Our reading of Acts, the church was tested, and yet it thrived. You don't have to worry any more than they did. The devil can't win. I don't think we can depend on an easy life in this world, but I believe that he works on us and gives us the tools to succeed, to fit that building. He says he'll give us the keys to the kingdom of heaven. I believe we have a long way to go, that we're a work in progress. I don't know if that new church building is the answer, but I am determined that we do the right thing. Let's turn over to Ephesians 2. That adds to this a little bit. Thinking about the keys to the kingdom of heaven, the keys to that door of escape from death and evil. Ephesians 2, I'm going to start verse 19. Consequently, you are no longer foreigners and aliens. You're no longer an outsider. You belong. But fellow citizens with God's people and the members of God's household, built on the foundation of the apostles and prophets, what I told you about before. We're built on those who preceded us. They led the way. Continuing with Jesus Christ himself as the chief cornerstone. In him, the whole building is joined together and rises to become a holy temple in the Lord. And in him, you two are being built together to become a dwelling in which God lives by his Spirit. What a promise. His work in you, another stone in that temple that he calls home. Often hard for us to see, but it's another part of that keys to the kingdom of heaven. Like a building that's put together perfectly. We're learning to fit together. Sometimes there's some rough edges that need knocked off me. Paula will be happy to tell you. But we are being fit together. Be interconnected. And we saw some pretty good evidence of that on Pentecost. The temple's symbolic of God's home. It's where man interfaces with God. And you are part of that temple. In that connection with the rest of the world, what is our group's part? Who are we? We're just a few people. And yet it seems to me he uses little things. He does that very often. And I think we're seeing some cooperation and growth and working together. Let's encourage that if we can. It's great to see. Let's turn over to 1 Corinthians 12. Another place it talks about it. What I think of as the keys to the kingdom of heaven. The way of explaining it to us. 1 Corinthians 12, I'm just going to read verses 12 and 13. The body is a unit, though it's made up of many parts. And though all its parts are many, they form one body. So it is with Christ. For we were all baptized by one Spirit into one body. You know, we're in that body, whether you're here or anywhere else. It's the same body. Whether Jews or Greeks, slaves or free, no matter who you are, where you came from, how old you are, how young you are, what your education is. Do you know what? Jesus Christ doesn't care. He cares about your heart, who you are. Don't worry about your education. I've heard that several times recently. Sometimes the wisest people didn't go to school. Remember that and trust Jesus Christ to lead you. Sometimes it's easier because I've known some pretty educated people that weren't really into letting Jesus Christ lead them because they already knew it all. Sometimes it's hard to be humble if you know too much. Going on. Each one of you is uniquely qualified for your part in the body, no matter who you are. Do you think your physical body is made any better than the spiritual body? And yet look what your physical body's capable of. Pretty amazing that we work at all. You know, this body, 70 years. Think of this. How many machines work nonstop for 70 years? And that's now people live. Who was it the other day? Somebody well over 100. Nonstop. What machine works like that? God has it all figured out. You think the spiritual body of the church is any less? Of course not. Each is doing its part in your body, at least most of the time, in my body. But have you thought about how all the parts interact and how they move and how they respond to each other? We talk about how a person's coordinated. Do you know that means how each part works together? And that's how the church is intended to work. Sometimes we struggle. Sometimes we're sick. Sometimes the church is that way. But you know what? Jesus Christ helps us to overcome that. I suspect that the church getting well is just as automatic as you getting well after you have a cold. I don't know that. That's not the Bible. But I suspect that's true. Was the church done with any less planning or any less details or any less perfection than when he made you? And I know we all suffer from things that are good and bad, some good days and bad days. But at the same time, it's pretty amazing what he's done. How much more is God working to have a church as perfectly balanced and coordinated as your body? The gates of hell cannot prevail against it. That one Spirit to drink from, the keys to the kingdom of heaven. The Holy Spirit is the source of that connection that we saw back there. It's the source of our connection to each other as well as Jesus Christ. It's the source of the power to achieve his purpose. We saw how that worked. For the beginnings of the church in Acts, we saw that it worked. And I believe that we watch it work today. Sometimes we don't recognize it. The gates of hell will not prevail. And I believe that the church is right on schedule. It's right where God wants it, no matter what it seems like to you. He is doing a work and it's not going. It's right on schedule. I think we get a little better, more information about this in considering how plants grow or a tree grows. I've studied trees a lot. My wife's getting tired of me talking about it, I'm sure. But trees have some interesting things. One thing about trees, they do everything slow. And that's kind of true of the church a lot of the time. Have you ever noticed how a tree grows just a little at a time? How it sends out little new branches, tiny branches, and a new leaf pops out on the end of that branch. Or needles, they perform the same function. And they always are positioned so that they catch the light. The light necessary for the tree to live. Did you know that growing new leaves consumes a large portion of the energy that a tree has? I didn't know that. Each new leaf needs the energy from other leaves and from the roots in order to grow. If you watch it, my mom used to have some plants she kept in her little apartment. And it was so funny because it was like these plants had a mind. Because you could take that plant and have it faced one way and turn it around, and those leaves will turn around in an amazing short amount of time to get the light just right out of the window. Just from turning the plant around. And it happened really quickly. Those little shoots and those new leaves will grow out so they can get the light. They grow around anything. They try to grow around anything that gets in the way. We need each other, and we need each other to grow towards the light that is Jesus Christ. And as a group, we faced obstacles. And yet, we need the light of Jesus Christ. So we're forced to grow, not because we're so great, but because we seek the light, especially when confronted by trials. Have you ever noticed that in yourself? All of a sudden, you're going through a bad trial, you get prayer becomes more important. Your reading the Bible becomes more important, doesn't it? Now, it's not the best way. Best way would just be do it all the time, right? God didn't make us that way. He gives us challenges that help us reach for the light. You might say it's in our DNA. I believe that it is. Some years a tree grows a lot. And others you can't hardly see any change. And I think growth comes and goes for us just as well. Comes and goes for the church. But God's plan does not change and won't be derailed for any reason. I'm going to turn over to Colossians 3 and read a couple of verses here. This is what it looks like. What does a healthy tree look like? Colossians 3, starting in verse 12. Therefore, as God's chosen people, holy and dearly beloved, clothe yourself with compassion, kindness, humility, gentleness, and patience. Those aren't natural. God has a part in that because we don't do those they don't just happen. Bear with each other and forgive whatever grievances you may have against another. Boy, that can be hard to do. Yeah. Pretty specific and difficult. Forgive as the Lord forgave you, and over all these virtues put on love, which binds them all together in perfect unity. One translation says, ties us together perfectly, connects us. Connects us as the body. This is the result of using the keys to the kingdom of heaven. The keys to escape hell. This is how Jesus would describe it. Is this how Jesus would describe us? Are we working toward it? Recently, I've seen reasons to be optimistic for cooperation and working together. I believe that's growth. Haven't we seen an attitude of more cooperation? Let us pray for more healthy growth on a new level of unity, only possible through the Holy Spirit. Have you ever thought of us being a member of the church as a privilege? It's a privilege to be here. It's a blessing to be here. It's an opportunity that not many people have. To be a small part in His building. To have the keys to salvation. In conclusion, let's turn to Ephesians 5. This is where it ends up, and there's no questions. We don't know how it gets there. Ephesians 5, let's start at verse 24. Used about marriage all the time. It is about marriage, but it's about the church too. Ephesians 5, I'm going to start here at verse 24. This tells us the end for the church. Where's the church headed? Verse 24. Therefore, as the church is subject to Christ, so let the wives be to their own husbands in everything. Now skip down to verse 27. That He, Jesus, might present it to Himself a glorious church, not having spot or wrinkle or any such thing, but it should be holy and without blemish. It's escaped. The gates of hell didn't prevail. It's a privilege to be here. Jesus Christ is busy with His church. He isn't sitting back. He's busy with you. We see what He intends for us, and we know we're not there yet. We're a work in progress. But remember those first recorded words of Jesus about the church. And He never promised it would be easy. But He said, on this rock I will build my church, and the gates of hell will not overcome it. I will give you the keys of the kingdom of heaven. You have those keys. The keys to those gates. It's His promise to the early church. It's His promise to you and I. You've seen it work. It is working, and He will win.
If everybody please stand, turn to page 483 for the closing hymn. After this, I'd like to ask Richard Brewster to come for the closing prayer. 483.
thank you for this opportunity that we've had to come together and worship you. And we thank you for Jesus Christ, who makes it all possible. And we just pray that we would open our hearts to him, and that he would be with us this coming week as we're out and about. I pray that our lives would reflect his very nature and character dwelling in us, that people would, when they see us, would see Jesus Christ. They may not know for sure what they're seeing, but I pray that we would set that example for them. And we just ask for your dismissal now and give you thanks in Jesus' name. Amen.